Hey, John Cruz, and I've got a very exciting rod in my hand. This is the Cashion Rods Icon Series John Cruz Signature Punch-In Rod. Now, what is a punch-in rod? This is for your serious flippers when you're going to want to flip and pitch into that super heavy cover. You need to fish braided line, you need to fish big weights, 1 ounce, 1.5, maybe even a 2 ounce weight. I'm telling you, you really need a specific rod designed exactly for this application. This rod right here is 7 foot, 10 inches. It is a heavy action rod, but it is a moderate fast heavy action rod. So it's not going to be super stiff like a broomstick. You need to still have a little bit of play, but it needs to be throughout the rod. That's going to be the flex that you need. I mean, this is from years of trial and error, but there are some really unique aspects of this rod that I want to show you right here. First of all, you'll notice it is a counterbalanced rod. We had to figure out exactly the right weight to put into the bottom of this blank so that the rod will be like a fulcrum point right there where you hold it. So the reel is right here. My fingers are right where I would touch it and hold it. And as you can see, it just balances perfectly in my hand. The rod tip wants to stay up. So even though it is a big, long, strong rod, you're going to be able to flip and pitch that thing all day because you're not going to be fighting. You're not going to be fighting this rod to hold the rod tip up. That counterbalance makes it so much easier to fish all day long. You can flip and pitch and handle those big weights, handle those big fish coming out of those mats, coming out of those hyacinths, coming out of those reeds, all that kind of stuff. You can handle that with this bigger, heavier rod since it is counterbalanced. But just like we do with some of the other John Cruz rods, we have a soft butt piece right here at the bottom. So, you know, you're flipping and pitching, and then you finally get a bite and you want to lean back into one. You might have to pull out 10 or 20 pounds of vegetation along with that big old bass. You got to put some pressure on them. So you want to be able to have a soft butt piece. That's what we did right here on the bottom. Put a soft butt piece. Then as you move up, you will see the signature Cashion split grip, obviously with that John Cruz icon label, but then you can see it says punch rod written right on there. Very easy to tell it's the punch rod and not something else. But what you'll also see in that split grip section is that you'll see that's where the hook hanger is going to be. So the hook hanger is going to be right there. I like my big weights and all that to be down there. I do not like it to be up here, because if you're flipping and pitching and having all that in that big weight, it will beat up your rod up here. Just from experience, I don't like that weight up here. I would much rather have it down here to where you're going to keep that weight away from your reel. You're not going to have any of the, if you put any attractant on your bait, you're not going to have that around where your reel handle is or your reel. Don't have to fool with all that. You can keep it down there. You can keep it totally intact. And then as you come up, of course, the signature Cashion carbon fiber grips. I absolutely love these no matter what the conditions are. If you get some fish attractant on your hand, or if it's just wet or whatever it is, you can still get plenty of grip. Plus, they're extremely sensitive. Those grips are extremely sensitive. I love that. And then as you can see on the bottom, we've got the exposed handle on the bottom. So you got that, that hand with another touch point on the blank of the rod, just increases the sensitivity even more. As you're coming up, in front of the reel seat, you can see that signature Cashion icon blank. I absolutely love the look of that. It's so cool. And those are rolled right in North Carolina. The blanks are made right in North Carolina, and the rest of the rod is fully assembled right there in North Carolina as well. So it's made in the USA. You know, it's made with pride, made with American workers. And then as you continue up, you'll notice another very interesting and different aspect of the rod. The first guide is a microwave guide, which all of the John Cruz series has those microwave guides on them, but these ones are counter rotating. They rotate under the rod. So they're going to rotate under the rod. There's about 5 different terms you could use for this type of guide placement. But what happens is the guides go to the underside of the rod, and then they go throughout the rest of the length of the rod. So 7 foot 10 inch, it's a long rod. If we were going to keep the rod guides on top of the rod, we're going to have 2 problems. we're going to have a whole lot of guides on there to be able to keep that braid or that heavy fluorocarbon off of the blank, because you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on these fish. That's one of the reasons that we made those guides down there on the bottom. We get the line on the bottom side, so no matter how hard you pull, your line is never going to touch the rod blank. So that's one big thing. The other big deal with it is that it provides zero reel torque. If you've got all of those guides on the top of the rod, when you go to really lean back on one of those big bass and a lot of vegetation, the guides are going to want to tilt one way or the other. So the reel is going to be torquing really hard to the left or to the right, one way or the other, because all of those guides are going to try to tilt one way or the other as you're leaning back. But because of the way these guides are designed, they go to the underside of the rod. So no matter how hard you pull, it's not going to torque one way or the other. It's going to pull straight down, a lot less fatigue, especially if you're catching a bunch of bass punching during the course of the day. A lot less fatigue, plus less guides equals less weight. So the rod tip is going to be a little bit lighter than it would have been if you'd had, 4 or 5 or 6 more guides, which is what you would need on there if you kept them on top of the rod. So there's a couple reasons for those revolving guides on the rod, and that's it right there, man. The Cashion Icon Series John Crews punch rod. I absolutely love this rod, and when they're on it, there is probably not a more fun way to catch them than punching that heavy matted vegetation and getting those big old bass out of there.